of Scotland. But otherwise, it's simply sunny skies across the board. And with that very strong June sunshine, temperatures reaching the mid to high 20s across northern Scotland through to Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales, and in some spots 30 or 31 Celsius. Now, for one or two areas, there's the likelihood of a thundery shower or two, particularly through the Grampians as we end the afternoon and go into the evening, or perhaps through northeast England. But these will be very isolated. For the vast majority, it's a dry and bright end to the day. And look at the temperatures. This is at 6 p.m, 29 Celsius still there for Birmingham. Widely the mid to high 20s clinging on into the evening. And even after the sun goes down, despite the clear skies, we're going to see that warm air stay with us, and as a result it's going to be an uncomfortable night for sleeping. Some patchy cloud here and there, and again a few showers potentially towards the southwest, but for the vast majority it is a clear and dry night, and temperatures in one or two spots, for example Cardiff, not dropping below 20 Celsius. That gets us off to a very warm start to Saturday. It's not going to be entirely sunny. There will be areas of cloud in the west, a humid feel in the west. Plenty of sunshine further east, though, and with that sunshine, temperatures reaching the 32 to 34 range. And elsewhere, as those temperatures rise, the risk of some severe thunderstorms developing.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we have found some peacocks, so we've been speaking to people today, hearing from them how much of a nuisance they say they are. It is a real mix though here. Some people saying that actually they're all right, they're part of the furniture of this village now. You can see this peacock here showing all of its feathers. I'm going to be very honest with you, we have just seen it attempt to mate the peahen that you can see behind it there. And this showing of feathers is part of the thing, what they do to part of the mating call here as well, to try and show all of the feathers off and everything like that. And there's a thing that they do train rattling as well. I wonder if Mr. Peacock might talk to us. Mr. Peacock, would you?
Come on, Jack. Come on, Jack. We need you to get involved.
I'm not sure. GB News, Jack
This
Carson?
is your big David Attenborough moment, Jack.
Any questions to say to the nuisance you might be causing people? Any response?
Although this feels a little bit intimate now, if there's a bit of a moment going on. It's all got a bit voyeuristic.
Very happy to talk to us so far this morning, but some residents of Tutbury here have spoken to us this morning. Take a listen to what they've told us about what they think about all these peacocks.
They've been here longer than I have, so I've lived in the house I live in at the top here 47 years. They've been there all that time, because they were from the castle to start with. The people at the castle used to have them, and they're just part of the village.
I hate them. When they do all that damage, it's heartbreaking, you know. Yeah, round them up and take them to a farm or a zoo, where they're supposed to be.
They're like the furniture. They should stay around here. You know, people just need to let them get on with what they are. They're nature's animals, and they deserve to live around here, don't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you on this historic day. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
MPs historically votes to pass the assisted dying bill that will now allow terminally ill adults with 6 months or less to live to get medical assistance to end their own lives. Throughout the show today, we'll get reaction to this historic moment in this country's history from people on both sides of this historic debate. And in other news today, Nigel Farage is calling for protesters from Palestine Action who broke into RAF Brize Norton and damaged jets to be classified as terrorists. Is it time to clamp down on these renter thugs and jail all protesters who break into military compounds? And Reform UK has won a by-election in North Yorkshire by its biggest ever winning margin. Tom Seston, a first-time candidate, won a whopping 62.7% of the vote, more than all of the other parties combined. He'll join me on today's show to tell me how he swept the Labour Party into the Scarborough Bay. And Angela Rayner is planning a bloodbath council tax raid on London and the South East to help fund deprived areas in the north. The Deputy PM claims that this is progressive, but with the top 10% of British taxpayers already paying over 60% of all taxes, is this yet another socialist wealth tax in disguise? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. History has been made today in the United Kingdom. The right to die has been legalised. We join countries around the world that will allow people to make the choice. The margin of victory, if that's the correct word, was only 23 votes. That was about half the original margin, as parliamentarians seemed to waver when it came time to pass the button and pass this historic law. On today's show, I'll be joined by campaigners, by activists, by parliamentarians, by those directly impacted by these decisions in their own lives to ask them, is this a dark day for Britain? Are parliamentarians playing God, or are we moving towards a more progressive, enlightened society where we're allowed to make informed choices to help lessen pain and suffering as we approach our final days on this planet? It's a hugely divisive topic and one I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts on. So please get in touch. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do it. But before today's show, here's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and very good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 3. Well, a recap on that breaking news this hour that MPs have voted to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales, described by campaigners as a day for the history books.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
Well, the bill passed by 23 votes, allowing terminally ill adults with 6 months to live the right to end their own lives with medical help. Supporters say it's a victory for dignity and common sense, but critics warn it's a dangerous law that strips away vital safeguards. One opponent said the bill fails to protect vulnerable people from coercion and abuse. It now heads to the House of Lords, where the real battle begins. A major security review is underway after pro-Palestinian activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint over 2 military planes. Footage shows them riding electric scooters inside the base and targeting an aircraft's engine. The Prime Minister has called the act disgraceful. The Ministry of Defence says it strongly condemns the damage. Palestine Action claims they've disrupted Britain's role in war crimes in the Middle East. Reform UK's Nigel Farage said the group should be labelled a terror organisation. GB News can reveal police are actively investigating reports of grooming gangs operating now in Newcastle. Survivors are coming forward with testimony, including one woman whose case collapsed after police failures. Northumbria Police says it's assessing fresh intelligence and evidence.
I do want the National Crime Agency to investigate abuse in Newcastle, because even though it's not the biggest city, it's happening really badly, and there's probably a lot of survivors out there who might be able to reach out if they haven't said anything. I do want my case to be reopened and investigated because these men, I just know that they will be involved in doing what they did to me still to this day.
Well, the North East's Labour mayor is backing calls for a national inquiry now, demanding the region's voice is heard. Kim McGuinness is one of the first senior figures in the party to support that move. In other news, R&B star Chris Brown has pleaded not guilty to trying to cause grievous bodily harm after an alleged bottle attack at a London nightclub. He appeared at Southwark Crown Court this morning to enter his plea. The US singer was granted conditional bail last month and allowed to continue his international tour, but only after putting down a £5 million security to guarantee his return to court. That money could be forfeited if he breaches any of his bail conditions. And a UK heatwave is peaking today, with Saturday set to hit 34 degrees Celsius and London already passing the heatwave threshold. An amber heat health alert, though, remains in force across England, warning of pressure on hospitals and rising health risks. A yellow storm warning is also now in place from 3 p.m. on Saturday, covering parts of the Midlands, Wales and northern England. Forecasters warn of flash floods, hail and lightning as heat and humidity trigger intense thunderstorms. Fire crews have battled already over 500 wildfires this year. That is up more than 700% on 2024. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And we begin with the historic news that MPs in the United Kingdom have voted to approve the assisted dying bill. And that means that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to end their lives. And let's remind ourselves now of this momentous moment that this took place a short while ago in Parliament.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, and look!
Well, there was shock and despair for some, but this was the moment the campaigners celebrated that result.
We won!
We can now speak with GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster, who is there for us in Westminster Hall. Catherine Forster, you've been covering this story throughout. You and I have debated the moral complexities of this, the implications of this, the lessons we've learned from abroad. Today, it was voted through. Tell us the mood on the ground there at this historic moment.
Yes, well, we have just witnessed history. There's lots of votes in Parliament, of course there are, but this is going to be the biggest change to society in England and Wales for decades, potentially, since the Abortion Act, because what this means is, yes, it will go to the House of Lords, but it has to be implemented by the NHS by 2029. The founding principles of the NHS will have to be rewritten. Concerns, of course, about the state of palliative care, the pressure on the NHS, but many, many people absolutely delighted, thinking this is a long overdue change which will save people that are dying suffering. I'm joined now by Jake Richards. He is the Labour MP for Rother Valley. He sat on the Bill Committee and is absolutely an expert on this. Jake, thank you for talking to us today. You must be feeling very relieved. Tell us why you feel it is so important this change is made.
Well, yes, I'm really pleased. This is a profound moment, and for thousands of people, including many of my constituents who have campaigned and fought for this change in the law for many, many years. Saying that, this is not a celebration. We're very aware there are other people, including constituents of mine, who are really worried about this change, who are against this, and we need to bring the country together now. And as this bill goes to the House of Lords, where there'll be further amendments and hopefully further strengthening of those safeguards, I hope people can be reassured that this bill is really rigorous. The government will have 4 long years to implement it to make sure it's safe. But yes, on a personal level, obviously to be involved in a small way in really profound social change is a really important moment for me.
And Obviously, huge relief, but it will take time. Are you confident, given the resources, given the state of the NHS and palliative care, given the opposition from quite a lot of doctors to this, that you will be able to implement it and do it well and properly in that time frame?
I'm really confident that this can be done within the 4-year time period within the legislation. I think that's a pretty reasonable time frame for it. But look, I'll be keeping an eye on it. My job as an MP is not just to sign this bill and then go home. I will be keeping an eye on what the government is doing over the next 4-year period and making sure that they're held to account as they should be. This is really serious stuff, and there are some doctors who are for it, there are some doctors who are against it. I'm really pleased that we're going to be making real progress over the next few years at implementing it. And at the same time, I'm really pleased the government have committed again to look at palliative care, because it's not either or. We need to improve both. We need to improve palliative care and offer assisted dying, in my view, and I hope that will be done over the coming months and years.
One of your fellow Labour MPs, Vicky Foxcroft, just resigned the whip over the disability cuts. She spoke in Parliament earlier saying that she was astonished at the lack of voices in this debate about people from disabilities. Many of them feel incredibly worried and that they've been closed out. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I understand there are lots of people from disabled communities who are really, really worried about this. I don't accept the criticism that Vicky made. I personally met with disabled people in my constituency, disabled groups as well, gave evidence to the Bill Committee. My neighbouring MP and colleague, Marie Tidball in Penistone Stockbridge, went above and beyond to make sure that disabled voices were heard as part of this process and in the assisted dying process. And we've had actually real big changes since second reading in the bill in that regard. But that conversation continues. This is not the end of the road in any way, and I'll continue to be talking to disabled constituents and others about this. But it's worth saying that there are a lot of disabled people in this country who do support this change as well, who don't want to be left out and who would like to have the option of an assisted death in certain circumstances. We need to make sure that's done safely, but I don't think it's a homogenous group or there's one view on this.
Jake Richards, thank you very much for talking to us on GB News. Thank you. So an enormous day in Parliament. I was struck by something that Conservative MP Ben Spencer said a little bit earlier in the Commons. He said, we are bound to let some people down. If it had not passed, terminally ill people would feel abandoned. We know there's horrible stories of people having taken their own lives. I was talking to a gentleman whose wife had effectively suffocated despite palliative care, but now as things stand it's going to go ahead, but there'll be many like Diane Abbott and others very concerned for what this might mean for the very most vulnerable people in society.
Thank you, Catherine. I know you've done a huge amount of work on this. You've been to Canada, looking at the lessons we can learn from there, and your work's been excellent on this. I can sense the emotion in your voice. Thank you for joining us today from Westminster, Catherine Forster. Let's get back to the studio now and have a debate on this, the pros and the cons of this truly momentous time in British political history. I'm joined in the studio by the former chair of Dignity in Dying, Dr. Jonathan Romain, and also the Global Campaigns Manager at Citizen Go, Caroline Farrow. Welcome to you both. If I could start with you, Dr. Romain, would you mind setting out the timeline now? A lot of people, I think, believe this is law now. It's not. What happens next?
No, you're quite right. It was an important vote, but it won't happen tomorrow because it's first of all got to go to the Lords. There'll be further amendments. It could ping-pong back to the Commons, but it is likely to pass the Lords because they tend to follow the will of the Commons. And then it still won't be law. We expect they'll pass it in November. But then there's going to be an implementation period, because this is a very serious business, and we've got to get it right in terms of the protocols, the training for GPs. So they're allowing between 2 and 4 years. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it is hopefully in the pipeline. And I say hopefully because this isn't about winning or losing. This is about helping people who are terminally ill and mentally competent and who are suffering and who have had a great life, but they feel that they are suffering unbearably, and now is the time for them to let go. Now, of course, if people want to carry on to their last breath, as I'm sure most people will, that's great, and they should have every support, palliative care. But for those people who are suffering, and we know there are so many stories, in fact, my tipping point, because I was initially, I don't know if you know this, I was initially a bit wary about this, and then I kept on, as a Minister of Religion, visiting people in hospital. They had brilliant care, but they were still dying in pain. And my tipping point was when I went to see our chap, I call him Colin, and he was not just in his bed, he was on his bed, on his knees, with his head in between his knees. And I said, why are you in this position? And he said, I That's the only way I can control the pain. And I thought there has to be a different way. There has to be a better way. So this is really about giving people options. People who want to carry on, great. They should be having every support. But people who want to let go and say, thank you, God, it's been a great life, but I really don't want to suffer. And these are people, of course, who are terminally ill, so they are dying anyway. And they don't want to carry on in excruciating pain or whatever. Okay. We should give them that option.
Caroline Farrow, you no doubt have a very different take on this. I can see you're very emotional. When I spoke to you beforehand, devastating news for you. Tell us what you believe this spells for Britain.
I think it's not a vote for dignity. I think it's a vote for despair. And I think, once again, laws are being made by the strong that's going to disproportionately affect the weak. Sorry, I don't normally get upset, but yeah, I think this is so shocking. One of the things that struck me as Jonathan was talking was you were talking about doctors needing to be trained. You know, so that trained to what, basically? Thank you. Trained to kill people. And I think this is one of the issues with this bill, is that we can't just say this is a private decision. We live in a country where we have a socialised healthcare, and a private decision is going to affect every single individual. And I think it's those individuals, well, we know it's those individuals who are privileged that will have the choice. Individuals who are feeling... One of the amendments that was rejected this morning was to deny... There was an amendment that said if somebody's being pressured or coerced, they won't be... or feels that they're being a burden. If someone feels they're being a burden or is mentally ill, they won't be allowed an assisted death. And that amendment got voted down. So it is people who feel like they are being a burden, who... You know, we know that choice is very rarely made in a vacuum. Choice is very rarely made objectively. And I think this just changes the nature of doctors. It changes the role of the NHS. It has provided a foundation for the charter of the NHS to be changed at will by any future government. It's a Trojan horse. So the NHS that was set up to protect and conserve our health can now kill us. And then that's before we go into the logistics of... We don't know what drugs are going to be used. We don't know what method. There's some terrible stories of people being given the drugs to die and taking 72 hours. I think there was one case of a man who it didn't work and then he died two weeks later. We've all got stories. My father was given a terminal diagnosis in 1990. He's still, thank God, here today. I have a very good, close personal family friend whose sister chose an assisted death in Canada, and she said there was absolutely nothing dignified about this. So I have to admit, yeah, my heart's breaking. This doesn't just affect a few individuals. This affects everybody, and I think it's... You know, I think the reaction of the disabled campaigners outside of Parliament today, it's like a dark cloud descended. You know.
Can I come in and correct you gently? Because firstly, doctors won't be killing patients. The really key thing about this is that it's assisted only in that you can get a prescription. But you have to be compos mentis, you have to be mentally competent. Only you yourself can take the medication. And that's really crucial, because we want people with agency to do it. So it's not doctors killing people, it's doctors giving people the prescription if they so wish to take it. And as for coercion, well, actually, doctors are already trained to spot coercion. This will be additional training on top of it. And the big thing, well, you mentioned disabled people, but of course, if you're disabled, you don't qualify. You have to be terminally ill. So whether you're able or disabled is irrelevant. You have to be terminally ill. And remember also, we're not going into a leap into the dark, which sort of Caroline seems to imply.
But there have been a lot of people saying people with anorexia could qualify. The financial strain on the NHS could be enormous. Is the sign-off inadequate? Are there enough psychiatrists to take care of the caseload? We don't know how many people may come forward or what the costs may be. There could be oversight issues.
But we do. That's the whole point. This isn't like the first thing in the world. We're doing exactly what's happened in Oregon, which is they've had it since 1997. Very, very similar. And that's, what, over 27 years? That's 27 years ago. So we've got 27 years' worth of medical records, statistics, research, regulation, monitoring. This is no leap into the dark. We are actually following a well-trodden path. And of course, what's really great about Oregon is not only do we have the records, but also we know from Oregon that palliative care people who were initially against, I have to say, are now working hand in hand with the assisted dying process, and they get benefits as well. I mean, what happened in October? Remember, Wes Streeting gave £100 million to the palliative care hospices so that palliative care should be just as much supported as assisted dying.
OK, Caroline Farrow, final word to you. I know you also shared huge concerns about the recent, well, very recent passing of the abortion bill too. Is there something in your eye, you think, going on about the sanctity of life with this government and something that sends out grave worries for you?
I think so. I mean, I heard the MP, Luke Jones, I think, talk about... He referred to the bill that was passed, the amendment to the Police and Criminal Justice Bill on Tuesday, and he said, we've already talked about choice this week. You know, and that choice was the choice of a mother of a full-term healthy baby to be able to procure her own abortion with no sanctions. And he said passing this would bookend the week nicely, which was incredibly callous. I think the problem is that the Parliament doesn't... Our parliamentarians don't understand the dignity, sanctity and value of life. We're being seen as a commodity, and it has very much felt like a week of death. And the other thing is, this change... I know one campaign group, the Together campaign, were calling for a referendum. This change was not on any single party's manifesto.
Not true, not true. It was on Conservative and Liberal Democrats said that they were in favour. Right.
Nobody actively campaigned on this issue. And
well, you're just going back on yourself. You just told something that wasn't quite true. So
I would like to see where it was openly published on the Tory manifesto. I mean, frankly, I think any Conservative who voted for this bill should be stripped of office. They're not a Conservative. What are they conserving?
It was conscience. It was a matter of conscience, which is why it was a private member's bill, which is the best thing to be.
But it's not. You know, it's not. This is a matter. Death affects everybody. It's a matter of human experience.
This is about helping people.
This is not individual conscience. This is about, do we, in a socialised healthcare system, do we coerce... And believe me, I know, I've had 5 children. With about 3 or 4 of my children, I've been offered an abortion every single time. You know, doctors will be able to raise this with their with their patient, sorry. Doctors will be able to say, I'm really sorry you've had a devastating diagnosis. Do you want to choose an assisted death? That is going to be seen as soft pressure. OK, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Thank you very much. 2 very different opinions, but both hugely passionate. Thank you. And that is Dr. Jonathan Romain and Caroline Farrow. Thank you. Now, coming up next, we'll be getting plenty more reaction to come as the assisted dying bill is approved by British parliamentarians. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday Five.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. Time is 3:26 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now to the historic news that MPs have voted to approve the assisted dying bill, and we can now cross back and join GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster inside the historic Westminster Hall. Catherine, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin. Well, we have seen history made here today because by 2029, assisted dying in England and Wales will have to be implemented. That is what MPs have voted for today. Yes, it will go to the House of Lords, but the House of Lords is a refining chamber, so this should become law. It's an enormous moment, and I'm joined now by Kit Malthouse. Now, he has campaigned for assisted dying for many, many years. Thank you for talking to us today. You're the Conservative MP for North West Hampshire. You've worked very closely with Kim Leadbeater on this. How are you feeling today, and why do you think this is such an important step to take?
So it's a very good question. I guess it's a mixture of feelings. I think the overwhelming feeling is relief. There's no cause for celebration today. This is a profoundly sad and difficult subject. We're talking about how people with terminal diseases choose to die. But I do feel relief because over the last 10 years or so of campaigning, I spent a lot of time with dying and bereaved people, some of whom have given their last moments to this campaign. And I'm relieved that, in 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, those stories that we've heard that are so profound over the last 10 years may come to an end. I just had a text from a buddy who said, kind of congratulations, getting it through. It came too late for his dad, but let's hope it will help other people. And that's what you hear again and again from these remarkable campaigners who've been working on this for so long.
There's a lot of opposition, isn't there, though, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, Pathologists, Physicians, and Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, real concerns about the NHS's capacity to implement this. Are you confident that this can be done and done well? And what do you say to people that say it's going to take resources that are badly needed from palliative care, for example?
I am confident it's going to be done well. I mean, the impact statement that the government did showed that the impact on the NHS is broadly negligible. And don't forget...
Well, it's going to save money, ultimately.
But don't forget, these are broadly people who've been in the NHS already, struggling with their disease, sometimes after many years, right? So they're already part of the NHS machine. And what we found in other countries, talking to Australian palliative care medics or in the States or wherever, is that actually this pretty quickly, seamlessly becomes part of a kind of compassionate way of handling death. And one of the values, of course, that it brings is the ability to have a proper conversation about death, which is something we don't do very well in this country. I had a conversation with a palliative care doctor from Australia who'd been an opponent before they brought it in. Afterwards, she felt a duty as part of her professional standards to participate and offer it to patients. I think she'd done 5 when I spoke to her, and she said it had profoundly changed her view. that she could see the compassion and the control that dying people were given through this. And as a result, she felt it was, I guess to a certain extent, her duty as a medic now to help people shepherd their way to what she could see for many was a dignified death. And so I think that we will see that in the UK, and I have confidence in our medics and our professionals that they will adapt to what the House of Commons wants. The other thing to remember, of course, that people forget about this is that a very high proportion of people who apply for and get permission for an assisted death don't use it. They have it as a card, an option, something they may wish to use if their disease becomes too much. But what it gives them is liberation from fear. Right? We heard again and again in the House today people saying they didn't fear death, they feared dying. And it's that process that this gives them control over.
Kit Malthouse, thank you very much for talking to us today. So Kit Malthouse saying no cause for celebration. Of course, it's a historic moment and a sombre moment too, because it is about the end of people's lives. Now, many people worry that what's happened in Canada, where it's been broadened excessively, could happen here. Kim Leadbeater has previously told me that that cannot happen, but there are many concerned that where this begins, that it could potentially end somewhere different.
Catherine Forster, excellent summary, brilliant interview. Thank you very much for joining us. We're back to you soon for more reaction now. Let's join Pastor Graham Nichols. Pastor Nichols, welcome to the show. I've taken a keen interest in your campaigning on this, and you've been very forthright. You think this is now legalised state-assisted suicide?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's a really sad day and the end of a really sad week when abortion being legalised for women has been voted as well. I think at a philosophical level, I think it's wrong because I believe in human dignity up to the point that we die naturally. And I think practically it's wrong in that it was a terrible debating process. Virtually everyone, not particularly Christians, seemed to be against it, and yet the MPs voted very significantly in favour of it. So I'm really sad from every point of view. I'm sad for the people who would now find themselves under pressure, disabled people, people with mental health issues. I think all the reassurances about Safeguard are just like mist. They will vanish very soon. This will become state-sponsored suicide, state-sponsored killing, and I'm sad for that. But I'm a Christian. I believe God's on the throne, so I still believe God's in charge. We lose some battles on the way, but we still think God's on the throne.
Pastor Nichols, I wonder if you've hit something more profound there. I was joined by Caroline Farrow a short while ago. No doubt you know her, and she was saying it feels like a godlessness has come across our parliament, almost a dark cloud, she put it as, and questioning the right of man to play God.
Yeah, I think it's part of a secularization of society where, how do you decide what's right and wrong when you have a godless society? You either sort of do it by crowdsourcing opinions, or you do it by thinking more what seems to kind of have the best utility, or you do it kind of on emotions in the moment. And particularly sort of worshipping the God of autonomy. I must have autonomy. Whatever it does for the rest of society and general trends, I must have autonomy. And I think that's what's happening. Autonomy, utility, those are the kind of things that we're heading for, rather than thinking as a society, how do we actually care for one another? I think it's nonsense, people kind of cheering on and saying, oh, this is wonderful, how we're going to care for people. This is not caring for people. This is killing people. This is not assisting people to die. We already do that. This is assisting people to kill themselves. And the whole idea that the doctor's not somehow involved in that, from your previous speaker, it's just ridiculous. Handing over the poison but not actually injecting it is a very trivial distinction. They're basically, an accessory to murder now. Doctors will be asked to be accessories to murder. It's an awful situation to be. I want people to still stay in the medical profession. I want people to still be doing hospice care and end-of-life care, but I fear for all the pressure they will come under. If you're running a hospice, you can't even opt out of this law and say that I don't want to offer it. If in good conscience, like the passionate people that will be involved in this debate, you can't actually say, I don't want to be involved in this. That's being overridden. So I think from every point of view, it's a terrible law and it's a sad day.
And yet, Pastor Graham Nichols, those holding the hands of their loved ones as they die in agony, as I have. It would no doubt test their faith in God. How could a God put somebody through that? It's a testing moment, even for those with the strongest of faiths.
Well, indeed, and all death is devastating. As Christians, we believe that death is a result of original sin and our actual sin. So we have an explanation for death, and we have a hope beyond death. But yeah, in the moment, it's terrible. I just missed my mother's death by about 2 minutes, but I was pretty much there when she died, and similarly with my dad. So I understand that, and my father-in-law died in the autumn as well, last autumn. So I understand that, but actually there is a dignity in living with someone through their final months or days or hours, and actually you're robbing people of that closure. So I think everybody loses, nobody wins. However hard this is a shaping and a good experience that we go through.
This is a day for sombre reflection. It's a deep conversation, this. I think it's going to test a lot of people's moral fibre, their faith. And I want to thank you, for helping me to try and make some sense of this, because I think a lot of people tuning into this today and seeing what's happened will be trying to go through the same journey. Thanks for helping us all to try and understand it. Pastor Graham Nichols, pleasure to have your company. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including concerns that the changing of the definition of Islamophobia could impact the inquiry into grooming gangs. More on this next with me, Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there, and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge, and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places. And it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night, despite the clear skies. Temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists on the A737 should approach with caution due to delays northbound between Linklive Interchange and St James. The A55 westbound is closed between Junction 18 and Junction 17 at Conwy Morford due to tunnel contraflow. On the M6 southbound in Warrington, one lane is closed after a collision, causing a 20-minute delay. Norfolk's A47 eastbound is delayed by a collision with one lane closed. In Hampshire, the M27 westbound is slightly congested. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast has delays at Birmingham New Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, there are stark warnings that government proposals to redefine Islamophobia could shut down discussion around rape gangs. Now, the think tank group, the Policy Exchange, have said that the working group on the new definition, led by the former Attorney General Dominic Grieve, needs to be suspended with immediate effect, with concerns that the ability to hold those accountable for the rape gang scandal could be hindered. Well, let's speak now with the head of security and extremism at the Policy Exchange, and that's Paul Stott. Paul, welcome to the show. An excellent report you guys have out called How Not to Tackle Grooming Gangs, and central to that is this redefinition of the word Islamophobia. Tell us why you think this is a terrible idea.
Well, our report basically starts on the premise, Martin, that the ground on which British politics sits, or certainly the ground of this debate, has completely shifted following the national audit by Baroness Casey. And I think the Home Secretary did seem to recognise that. At the weekend, there's a recognition that people have been vilified in the past for making entirely sensible comments about grooming gangs. Indeed, Louise Casey herself was given the award of was nominated for Islamophobia of the Year by one activist group for a previous report she did on Rotherham. We know Andrew Norfolk and Cryer, local MP in Keighley, got terrible stick off people, and they were all right to say the things that they did. It was their critics that were in the wrong. And what we can't do with this inquiry when it gets going is put a straitjacket on it. It needs to look in a lot of dark areas. It needs to get stuck in to failing past police inquiries, issues around local councils. And our fear is if there's a definition of Islamophobia, people will be afraid to speak out.
I can't see anything that can criticise you on. The notion that Baroness Casey herself in 2017 was nominated to be Islamophobe of the Year because she was investigating the Rotherham scandal is in itself surely enough to send the alarm bells that we should and could, be allowed to criticise anything. It was only a short while ago that calling these rape gangs Pakistani-dominated rape gangs, which is factually correct, was Islamophobic. The timing is terrible. Surely they've got to press the pause button. But do you think that will happen?
Well, this group that you mentioned, the Muslim hatred / Islamophobia definition working group, as its rather lengthy title, is headed by Dominic Grieve. It was established by the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, back in February, and given 6 months to come up with a working definition of Islamophobia. It wasn't tasked with whether there should be a definition at all, which does rather suggest that people's minds are made up. And indeed, Dominic Grieve, as chair, he had previously supported the APPG, or Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims, who came up with an earlier definition. So in many ways, I fear this is a done deal. Indeed, one of my colleagues, Sir John Jenkins, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, he was asked to give evidence to Mr. Grieve's group, and he declined to do so, basically fearing it's a done deal, that the government's committed on this. And our argument now is because of what's clearly been established by Baroness Casey, because of the need to have a full and proper and fearless inquiry, Angela Rayner now needs to pause this group, and the government needs to pause all its work on an Islamophobia definition. That doesn't mean stopping work on anti-Muslim hatred. That's already illegal. It means pausing work on an Islamophobia definition, and that's for the government to do now.
Paul Stott, do we even need a definition of Islamophobia specifically as a specific protected religion? We have, as you quite correctly say, anti-hate crimes. We have equality laws which specifically protect people along lines of faith, along race, along gender. We have the framework already. Why do we need special dispensation? Why do we need special treatment? And could that give special cover to wrongdoings, particularly around the sensitive issue of rape gangs?
Well, I don't think we need special dispensation for one faith. And indeed at Policy Exchange, we've argued now for 5 or 6 years that a definition of Islamophobia would inevitably restrict freedom of speech. And even though the government's current position is it wouldn't be legally binding, the reality is that in practice it would be, because if it's accepted by employers, it's accepted by trade unions, it's accepted by government and across the public sector, it in effect becomes the rules, the policy, the law of your workplace. And I think it'd be very difficult for somebody who, for example, worked in a local authority in somewhere like Rochdale, Rotherham, Telford, some of the areas where we've seen real problems in the past, it'd be very hard for them to speak out if they know it's going to cost them their job. So the case against this definition or policy is stronger now than it ever has been.
And Paul Stott, Sir John Jenkins, the co-author of this report, I think just sums it up brilliantly. He says this: the redefinition of Islamophobia will almost certainly turbocharge cancel culture and would be an undeniable act of two-tier policy, creating special status and protection for members of one faith alone. I put it to you again, Paul Stott, that is not how we live in Britain. We don't have special protection. We stand before the law, we stand before God with equity.
We do, Martin, and I think the government is now beginning to be a little bit rattled by the charge of two-tier policy, two-tier policing, etc., has been one of the big debates. If it accepts a definition of Islamophobia, that would be the worst example yet of two-tier policy, and it will have a very negative effect on social cohesion, on community relations, and I think also they'll pay the price at the ballot box potentially.
Paul Stott, an excellent summary, and of course adding nobody should be discriminatory towards anybody for their faith. This isn't about that. This is about, do we need special definitions? Paul Stott, excellent. Thanks for joining me today on the show. A pleasure to have your company from Policy Exchange. Great report. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is a forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The hot air that we've got across the UK on Saturday extends into France and Spain, but the chance of thunderstorms in these areas as well. Also the chance of thundery showers through Greece, but the islands should escape with sunny spells, albeit with a keen breeze. Through Italy, we've got plenty of sunny skies, but the Alps will see some lively weather with showers and thunderstorms, and those showers also affecting parts of Spain. But Portugal seeing largely sunny skies and plenty of sunshine through the outlook period.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
What do you think? Is there personal agendas being pushed in schools by maybe individual teachers, or perhaps it's the ethos of the entire school?
I don't think it's not widespread, but there are isolated incidents where, you hear about teachers who have put too much of their own personal opinion into things. And it's actually in the Teaching Standards of England, Part 2, about your professional and personal conduct as well, and also the prevent duty. So I think it's not widespread, but we do hear of cases where teachers have been struck off for this behaviour.
So are there quite strict guidelines then, Christine, on what teachers can bring to the classroom? And would you know if a teacher is stepping outside of those boundaries?
Yeah, 100%. You, as a head teacher and as a senior management team, you need to look at the curriculum, what's being taught, and that how it's delivered within the classroom as well, because there are strict standards. And if a school is failing in that way, then it's not good at all.
Fahima, what might the issues be with this, do you think, from your point of view? If a teacher brings their own ideas about identity politics, let's say, or actually just politics in general, into the classroom, should they be allowed to do that?
To be honest, I don't think that teachers actually will bring their own politics into it. I think it's just their style of teaching, regardless of their opinion. I don't think they can rewrite history. It's only about expanding it. And good teaching presents multiple perspectives, especially in a diverse country like Britain. And it doesn't mean it's erasing sort of any sort of content or traditional. It just means that we're just, adding different voices and critical thinking. That's the whole idea about education, is critical thinking and not blind agreement.
GB News, the People's Channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we're in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's the penultimate day at Royal Ascot, where the King and Queen have made yet another appearance. Let's go live now to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, tell us all about it.
Hi Martin, the weather is glorious here at Royal Ascot. Ethical Diamonds is the horse that has just won the Duke of Edinburgh Stakes, but a little bit earlier on I spoke to two brothers, one in the Royal Air Force, one in the Royal Navy, who is here raising money for military charities at Royal Ascot. Take a look.
Yeah, so we grew up in a military family. Our dad was in the military, in the Royal Navy, and then all three of his sons have ended up going into the military. Two of us in the Royal Navy, and then me as a bit of the black sheep of the family joining the Royal Air Force.
Oh, how did that go down?
Not well, but lots of banter as always, but really enjoying serving in the RAF, and obviously my brother's in the Navy.
Of course, and Ethan, you are here, both of you here representing the Armed Forces charities. Just explain to me what those charities do and how they support serving personnel in the UK.
Yeah, so we're here collecting for all three tri-service charities, and those charities support serving personnel, veterans and their families in times of need. So a very, very proud day to be collecting for them. So I'll be around the bandstand later this afternoon collecting.
And of course here at Royal Ascot, is it both your first time here today?
No, I've actually been here for the last 5 years, so we're big racing fans as well as serving members of the military. So this is tips both sides of the coin, so we really enjoy it.
So are you on duty today, or do you get to have a bit of fun as well?
A bit of fun, enjoy watching the horses and having a bit of a flutter, and then later on we'll be collecting with buckets at the exits for the general members of the public to donate to the charities.
Of course, and Ethan, of course, their Majesties just took part in the royal procession, and you, your brother and your military colleagues all saluted His Majesty before he went into the royal box. Just explain to me what it's like seeing His Majesty up close as head of the armed forces, and how important it is the royal family's connection to the Navy and the Air Force and the Army.
Yeah, it's an honour to be here and obviously see the procession come through, and even more of an honour to be able to salute His Majesty as he came past. So yeah, a day to remember.
And did he acknowledge you when he walked past you?
He did, yeah, as always, and he shared a few words, made sure we were getting looked after, fed and drank, and we wished him luck for the day.
Now all eyes on the Sandringham Stakes at 5 o'clock this evening, because the King and Queen's horse, Purple Rainbow, is running. Is it going to be third time lucky for the King and Queen with the winning horse? Because last couple of times they haven't been able to win. Could they pivot at the post this time? Let's see.
Beautiful stuff, Cameron Walker. You get all of the best gigs, great reporting and a splendid top hat as ever. Thank you, Cameron Walker. Now, plenty more to come in the next hour, including, of course, a full dissection of that historic assisted dying bill. I'll be joined by parliamentarians and campaigners from both sides of the divide. And also, I'll be joined by Reform UK's newest councillor, who won the biggest ever majority the Reform Party has seen to date. He garnered 62.7% of the vote share in North Yorkshire. That's more than all of the other parties combined. How did he do it? And how did he sweep the Labour Party into the Scarborough Bay? Reform's biggest ever winner joins me next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now it's time for your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there, and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge, and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places, and it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night, despite the clear skies. Temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Essential roadworks on the A77 at Ballantrae are restricting traffic in both directions, causing extended travel times. The A55 westbound in Wales is under a contraflow system due to a tunnel closure, leading to significant delays. A collision on the A50 eastbound in Staffordshire results in congestion. In Warwickshire, M40 delays persist due to lane closures. And in Surrey, 2 lanes are closed on the M3 westbound. And on the trains, East Midlands railway services face major delays between Nottingham and Derby. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
History is made as MPs vote to pass the assisted dying bill that will allow terminally ill adults with 6 months or less to live to get medical assistance to end their own lives. Throughout the show today, we'll get reaction to this dramatic moment in this nation's history. And Nigel Farage is calling for protesters from Palestine Action who broke into RAF Brize Norton and damaged RAF jets to be classified as terrorists. Is it time to clamp down on these renter thugs and jail all protesters who break into British military compounds? And Reformers won a by-election in North Yorkshire by its biggest ever winning margin. Tom Seston, a first-time candidate, won a whopping 62.7% of the vote, more than all of the other parties combined. He'll join me on today's show to tell me how he swept the Labour Party into the Scarborough Bay. And Angela Rayner is planning a bloodbath council tax raid on London and the South East to help fund deprived areas in the north. Now, the Deputy PM claims this is progressive, but with the top 10% of British earners already paying over 60% of all taxes, is this yet another socialist wealth tax? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. I'm joined in the studio by Matt Vickers, Conservative MP, who's just taken part in that historic vote in Parliament, whereby the tiniest of margins, 23 votes, it will now become law to allow assisted death in the United Kingdom. Where do you stand on this? I'd love to get your thoughts, because a lot of people say this is progressive. It's the way to give dignity in death. It's the right thing to do to end suffering and pain. Others say this is Parliament, it is man, it is Britain playing God. Do we have the right to do that, especially when there are so many concerns? What about these idiots breaking into an RAF base and damaging jets? And by the way, one of the Royal jets was there. How did they get in? How can this be allowed to happen? And is it time to throw the book at these absolute clowns? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do that. But before we kick off, it's time for your headlines. Here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. Just after 4 o'clock. Well, history made today. That is how campaigners are reacting as MPs have narrowly backed a landmark assisted dying law for England and Wales. The bill allowing terminally ill adults to end their lives with medical sign-off passed the Commons by just 23 votes.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
And after that vote, cheers, tears and hugs filled Westminster. Supporters called it a victory for compassion.
We won!
One MP described the current law as forcing people to die in secret or die abroad. But critics are warning it's a dangerous step, rushed through, they say, without proper safeguards and driven by emotion over evidence. The bill now heads to the Lords, with any change unlikely until around 2029. Turning overseas, and UK staff have been pulled out of Iran as the security situation in the region is worsening day by day. The British Embassy is now operating remotely, with the government calling it a precautionary measure at this stage. It follows Israeli strikes on Iranian military sites and Iran's missile retaliation last week. The Foreign Secretary David Lammy is in Geneva today, urging diplomacy in high-stakes nuclear talks. Meanwhile, Britain and its allies have vowed to crack down on Russia's shadow fleet in the Baltic and North Seas. A joint warning says ships without valid flags will face action under international law. Leaders say they're tightening the net, promising stronger, united efforts to expose and block covert Russian shipping. It comes on the same day that Russia and Ukraine have swapped yet more prisoners of war, with Moscow so far silent on the numbers. Russia claims its freed soldiers are now in Belarus. Here at home, a major security review is now underway after pro-Palestinian activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint over 2 military planes. Footage shows them riding electric scooters inside the base and targeting an aircraft's engine. The Prime Minister has since called the act disgraceful. Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White is outside the Ministry of Defence for us with the very latest.
Palestine Action say the reason they breached security at Brize Norton and damaged the aircraft is because they claim those aircraft were being used in support of the Israeli military, something officials here at the MOD have said is absolute nonsense. Now, these engines are going to have to be stripped and cleaned out. It's likely to be a costly exercise, and there's also a review of how security was breached in such a way that these activists were able to get airside and cause such damage in the first place.
Just an update on news coming to us out of London this hour, that 7 men have reportedly been arrested. That's after 2 people were injured during a protest outside the Iranian embassy in the west of the city. Police called to the area just before 10 o'clock this morning following reports of a violent altercation. 2 men, we understand, were treated at the scene, 1 taken to hospital, the other to a major trauma centre. Officers are at this stage still at the scene and have imposed protest restrictions in the area until at least Sunday. Footage coming into us showing bloodied and injured men lying in the road. Of course, we can't show you that footage due to the distressing nature of the situation, but that news just into us from London. Meanwhile, R&B star Chris Brown has pleaded not guilty for trying to cause grievous bodily harm after an alleged bottle attack in a London nightclub. He appeared at Southwark Crown Court this morning to enter his plea. The US singer was granted conditional bail last month and allowed to continue his international tour, but only after putting down a £5 million security to guarantee his return to court. That money could, though, be forfeited if he breaches any of his bail conditions. And I'm sure, like many of us, you're feeling the heat. Well, a UK heatwave is peaking. Saturday is set to hit 34 degrees and London has already passed the heatwave threshold. An amber heat health alert remains in force across England, warning of pressure on hospitals and rising health risks. A yellow storm warning, though, is in place from 3 p.m. tomorrow, covering parts of the Midlands, Wales and Northern England. Forecasters are warning of flash floods, hail and lightning as heat and humidity trigger intense thunderstorms. And fire crews have already battled over 500 wildfires this year, up more than 700% on 2024. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Westminster and Martin Daubney.
Thank you, Sam. Now we begin, of course, with the historic news that MPs have voted to approve the assisted dying bill, and that means that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to end their lives. Let's remind ourselves of that historic moment when the vote took place in Parliament a short while ago.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, and look!
And while many campaigners felt this was a dark day for Britain, this was the moment that some campaigners celebrated the result.
We won!
Well, a day of mixed emotions as history was made, and I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster and also the Conservative MP Matt Vickers, who voted against that bill a short while ago. Catherine, let's start with you. The ultimate division, the ultimate moral conundrum. And today, by the narrowest of margins, 23 votes, significantly smaller margin than maybe we expected, it came to pass.
Yes, and we have just seen history being made because, sure, this bill has got to go to the House of Lords, but it is not the House of Lords' job to radically alter or block it. So it should become law, no matter the state of the NHS or palliative care, in 2029. So this is a huge moment. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than life and death, and I guess comparable, you know, to the legalisation of abortion. But what struck me is, depending on who you speak to, it's like you're hearing about two different bills, because Kim Leadbeater has described this as being the most robust legislation in the world. Her supporters say that it's absolutely safe, that it's long overdue and very necessary to spare terminally ill people suffering at the end of their lives. But on the other hand, you've got other people, the Royal College of Physicians, of pathologists, of psychiatrists, saying that although they may be neutral on the theory of it, that this bill as it stands is simply not safe and unworkable. Ian Duncan Smith said it was actually unworkable. And it sounds like two entirely different pieces of legislation. But the NHS, we know, is under huge pressure. Now, we know that the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, a lot of the Labour big beasts are against that, against it. Wes Streeting is now going to have to make it work, and this will have to be funded. Now, Kit Malthouse, who was for it, admitted to me earlier, ultimately, it's going to save the NHS money. And obviously, there's ethical issues about how you feel about that. But in the short term, there will be costs. And I was talking to Robert Jenrick yesterday for GB News. He's extremely worried about elderly people or disabled people taking the option because they feel they're a burden. And as we've seen many times, this diagnosis of less than 6 months to live, it's incredibly difficult. So his grandma was told she had a short space of time to live. She had 9 more years. And it's extremely difficult. But the mood in Parliament, I would say, was fairly sombre. Those people celebrating outside, it didn't really feel like that in Parliament itself.
Matt Vickers, let's bring you in now. You took part in, undeniably, a moment in British history. You voted against this bill. What was your reasonings for doing so?
Well, it was an incredibly sombre day in Parliament today. Before that result was read, there was silence in the chamber. There was silence in the chamber. In fact, the guys in my office thought the sound had gone on the television because there's usually that much racket, but this was such a big moment. It was a big moment for people who were voting one way because they thought they were doing the right thing, and equally the rest of the room thought they were doing the right thing. As an MP, you've got to hear from people whose family members and friends have had the most horrific deaths, and you've got to put that into context. And then you speak to charity groups, to disabled people who fear that this thing could be extended and morph into something it shouldn't be. There was 300 amendments went down there to try to create more safeguards, everything from greater protections for people with special educational needs, people with mental health problems, people with learning difficulties, people, to prevent things like anorexia being something that could eventually leak into this. So I made the decision. No MP in there wants to see anybody suffer a long, protracted, painful death. At the same time, everybody in there who votes for that legislation needs to be confident that it puts safeguards in place that will prevent anybody being killed who is not able to make an informed decision on it, who is coerced, who is under pressure, who does it for any reason other than make an informed decision. And that was the challenge there today. There's lots of reasons to think that lots of those questions around safeguarding and checks were not in place. Lots of questions asked. We hope that when it gets to the Lords, there'll be more questions asked and we can tighten this thing up so that it's safe.
Tom Tugendhat said MPs are voting on assisted killing. James Cleverly made that bill. The NHS is not ready for this bill. It would be like a blank cheque. So on the one hand, there is the argument it could save money, but also could be a huge cost of actually applying this euthanasia. Ian Duncan Smith, again, as you said it's unworkable and also perhaps unlikely. Political allies Diane Abbott said no doubt people would die unnecessarily under this bill. Jeremy Corbyn also voted against it. May I ask you, Matt, on a personal level, you vote on a great many things. This is different.
It's very, very different. It's huge, isn't it? It's huge. And you also get people who have very strong opinions contacting you as constituents who think you're a terrible person for voting how you voted. Other people who think the best thing since sliced bread for voting for that because it's the right thing to do for very vulnerable people at the end of their lives, one way or the other. People have very strong opinions, but actually this is about detail. It's about making sure that nobody who shouldn't be making that decision makes it, that the protections are there for, we said, you know, people with special educational needs, people with learning difficulties, people with anorexia, people who might have all sorts of pressures. And the other thing that should be part of this debate is about palliative care. It's about, and the fact that if you're a person on your own, you see your family's inheritance disappear in paying for your care. Those are really big deals for some very elderly and vulnerable people who are suffering all sorts of situations.
And Catherine, a great many people have been saying, is it the right of Parliament to play God? Is this the way we should be going? And you've done a huge amount of work on this in the past, and you've unearthed some very legitimate and very real concerns about this being more liberalised, broadened out. So it starts off quite controlled, but it becomes something else. People with PTSD, disabled people, suddenly having the right to death. Could that happen in Britain? Could this go wrong?
Well, Kim Leadbeater has said to me that the law cannot be broadened here in the way that it has been broadened in Canada. Esther Ranson's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, said to me that there was no slippery slope. I think it is worth bearing in mind that the reason this has come about is because the Prime Minister made a promise to Esther Ranson, who is terminally ill with lung cancer, that time would be made for a debate in Parliament. He has tried to stay out of it, but his support of it is well known.
He voted in favour for it today.
He voted in favour of it today. Just to tell you, I mean, it cuts across party lines, but in terms of party leaders, the Prime Minister voted for it. Nigel Farage of Reform voted against it. So did Kemi Badenoch of the Conservatives, and so I believe did Ed Davey of the Liberal Democrats. But what has happened in Canada is that it started out with being restricted to people that are terminally ill, and then you get challenges on the grounds of human rights, and there's plenty of lawyers. I mean, Robert Jenrick, was a lawyer, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has said that the same thing will happen here because people with horrendous illnesses who are suffering terribly but that are not terminal will say, I have the human right for this as well, and it's almost inevitable that it will be broadened. Now, Kim Leadbeater says it will not happen. We will see. But in Canada, there's been terrible stories of military veterans with PTSD who need support, and instead of which being pointed to, they call it MAID, medical assistance in dying. A disabled lady that somebody said to her, you know, you're not living, you're just existing. And I thought it was interesting today that Vicky Foxcroft, the Labour MP who's just resigned the whip over the disability cuts that Labour are bringing in, stood up and said that she had been astonished how few voices from the disabled community had been heard on this, and that really, really worried her.
Catherine Forster, Matt Vickers, thank you. We have to leave it there. It's been quite a day. Now, still to come, Angela Rayner is planning a bloodbath council tax raid on Londoners and those living in the South East. She says to fund deprived areas in the North. But is that right for the South to pay for the North, or is that just another wealth tax? And also, Nigel Farage is calling for protesters from Palestine Action who broke into RAF Brize Norton and damaged jets to be classified as terrorists. Those two stories next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Welcome back. Time is 4:22 on this Friday afternoon. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, we're counting down to your best summer so far with £54,321. That's right, £54,321 in tax-free cash. And that's all there to be won. It's the biggest cash Great British giveaway to date. And it could all be yours. And here's all the details that you need to enter.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. Well, it could be yours with our greatest Great British giveaway cash prize so far. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like, giving you the chance to have a year full of top treats. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. So make sure you're in the draw for another chance to win £54,321 cash. Text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, earlier this morning, pro-Palestine protesters broke into RAF Brize Norton in Oxfordshire, damaging 2 military aircraft. You can see pictures on your screen now. These people posted on social media. Now, the group known as Palestine Action justified their actions by saying Britain continues to send military cargo and flies spy planes over Gaza. Now, the incident has been branded as disgraceful by Sir Keir Starmer, and Nigel Farage has called for the group to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation. It's an astonishing breach of British security at an RAF base. And let's now get the thoughts of the Telegraph columnist Jake Wallace-Simons. Jake, welcome to the show. I've got to say, this is absolutely astonishing, even of itself. If this was an act of vandalism at an airport, it would be bad enough. Even the fact it's going on once again about Israel, but the fact is that an RAF military base is an absolutely staggering security breach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the fact they were able to get into the base alone is a staggering fact. But they got in with electric scooters, were able to travel across the base to these aircraft and damage them by chucking red paint into their engines. And if that would have been explosives, that would have been far more serious. It could have even cost the lives of airmen who were there at the time. And it sends a signal to the Russians, to the Iranians, to the Chinese, and to our other enemies that Britain's air bases are not adequately defended. It's now open season for any terrorist, any rogue operator, whether from a state, hostile state or otherwise, to come and target our military installations. It's a really worrying precedent, and it shows or suggests that Britain was caught napping at this time of heightened security concerns.
And Jake, aside from the fact this is clearly an unforgivable breach of security on an RAF base, what about the notion that Sir Keir Starmer has said this is an appalling act of vandalism, but Nigel Farage actually said this is an act of terrorism? Are we once again seeing the indulgence of pro-Palestine protesters? And is this simply a step too far? You've campaigned vigorously and vocally about the anti-Semitic streak that's now running through the centre of Britain. This lot are at the forefront of that, and now they're on military bases. Should they be prescribed as terrorists?
Well, I think what it makes very clear is that when people are obsessively against Israel and obsessively against the Jews, they're also obsessively against Britain and our values and our way of life. The Jews and Israel are only the most vulnerable target, but they're really an expression of all the things that we hold dear. You know, we see that with marches through London again and again. They don't just attack the Israeli flag and Jewish protesters. They attack the Union flag, the statue of Winston Churchill. They've menaced the cenotaph. All the things that stand for Western democracy and the principles that we hold dear are in the firing line, as well as Jews and synagogues. And we're seeing that again here. You know, they're saying that they're against Israel, that they're somehow standing up for Gaza, but what they're doing is attacking the RAF airbase. You know, my grandfather, my Jewish grandfather, fought for this country during the Second World War, was involved in the D-Day landings, proudly for the RAF, as it happens. You know, he didn't live to see this current debacle of the enemy rising within our own societies against our own interests and the interests of Israel. And thank God that he didn't, because it's an appalling state of affairs. And frankly, it's encouraged by the elites. You know, Keir Starmer stands against this act of vandalism, as he calls it, which, of course, is actually an act of sabotage, of treason, perhaps even. But he himself has refused to send the RAF into action to defend Israel's skies at its hour of greatest need as it battles Iran on our behalf. Iran is an enemy not just of Israel, not just of the Iranian people themselves, but also of Britain. The Iranian crowds who are lauding the Ayatollah when he gives his venomous speeches chant death to England and death to America, as well as death to Israel. We know that they've mounted terror attack after terror attack, or rather they plotted terror attack after terror attack on our shores, assassination plots and other atrocities, which have been foiled, thank goodness, by our fine security services. When we're going to wake up and recognise that the Iranian people and the jihadis around the world have us in their sights, as well as the Jews and as well as Israel, we need to stand together against this common enemy. And unfortunately, Keir Starmer and these radical activists are both equally guilty in turning ourselves against ourselves in the name of being against Israel and the Jews. It's absolutely deplorable.
Jake Wallace-Simons, you raise a great point. And by the way, I've got a message from an Iranian dissident from inside the country thanking GB News for standing up for the Iranians who are living under the Ayatollah. More of that later on. I just want to show that clip there I had on screen, Jake Wallace-Simons. Let's play it again. I think this has largely been missed by most people, but I was tipped off this plane that's been circled in the background is actually RAF Voyager Vespina. Now, this is a jet used for the royal family. It's used by the Prime Minister. It's used by British governmental ministers. It was parked at RAF Brize Norton. And Jake Wallace-Simons, we have an additional conundrum here. Not only are military aircraft vulnerable, but this is the plane used to transport the royals. It's the plane used to transport Sir Keir Starmer himself. Simply in the background, anybody can walk up to it on a scooter. It's an embarrassment, Jake Wallace-Simons, of international proportions.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you were a security chief at MI5 and you saw that happen, thank goodness it was only paint in the engines this time. But what if they'd have been carrying a concealed explosive that they secreted away on that plane, which then subsequently carried the royal family? I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about. If I was the chief of MI5, I would be giving my staff and, of course, the British Army staff who are tasked to protect this site and the RAF, an absolute rollicking. They can't allow this to happen. They can't allow security to be breached in this way. Right now, our air bases across the country and across the world, and our military installations of other parts of the services, should be on high alert. They should be on a war footing. This is a time of huge tension in the Middle East and beyond. The RAF and British forces are involved by implication because our enemies hate us as much as they hate the Israelis, even if Keir Starmer's trying not to get involved. We are targets just as much as the rest of the West and Israel. And if we're not going to stand up and defend ourselves, how can we possibly hope to win a future war if, God forbid, it were to reach us via Putin or some other hostile actor?
And Jacob, put it to you, if the clowns from Just Stop Oil end up going to prison for climbing on a motorway bridge at the M25, if you're breaking into a secure compound, a military base, surely, if these imbeciles are caught, they should be going straight to the nearest prison. No questions asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the people in Just Stop Oil and these other radical groups often cross-fertilise. It's often the same people causing trouble on a number of different causes, whether it's Palestine, whether it's, you know, the environment, whether it's transgender radicalism, whether it's race radicalism, Black Lives Matter. It's this hardcore of anarchists, basically, who hate everything about Britain and about all the things that we love and seek to bring it down under whatever flag they can fly. And of course, they need to be treated very, very severely indeed under the law. They need to be banged up for as long as the law will provide, because we need to start sending a message that we no longer indulge and tolerate those people, either British citizens or outside of Britain, who hate us and who try to subvert us and bring us down. It's appalling that for year after year, for decade after decade, we've been inviting our enemies to come here and damage us and making excuses for them. We've got to start to get real. You know, previous generations during the war, during wartime, wouldn't have put up with this. Why are we?
Jake Wallace-Simons, you've absolutely nailed it. Thanks for joining us on the show today. A pleasure to have your company, and thank you for all the great work you do. There's loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including Angela Rayner, who is planning a bloodbath council tax raid on Londoners and those in the southeast to help fund, she says, deprived areas in the north. But is it right for the south to pay for the north, or is it yet another tax grab on the wealthy? But first, it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 4:30, the top story. History made today. That is how campaigners have reacted as MPs narrowly backed a landmark-assisted dying law for England and Wales. The bill allowing terminally ill adults to end their lives with medical sign-off passed the Commons by just 23 votes.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
Well, cheers, tears and hugs filled Westminster as supporters called today a victory for compassion.
We won!
One MP described the current law as forcing people to die in secret or die abroad. But critics warn the new law could be a dangerous step, rushed through without proper safeguards and driven by emotion over evidence. The bill now heads to the House of Lords, with any change unlikely before 2029. The UK is pulling staff from its embassy in Iran as a precaution amid fears the Israel-Iran conflict could escalate even further. It follows fresh Iranian strikes on Israel just this afternoon, while Israel confirmed it hit missile manufacturing sites in Tehran overnight. The UK, France and Germany are meeting Iran's foreign minister in Geneva today in an urgent bid to de-escalate. And it comes as Donald Trump is expected to decide within 2 weeks whether the United States will take any direct military action. A major security review is underway after pro-Palestinian activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint over 2 military planes. Footage shows them riding electric scooters inside the base and targeting an aircraft's engine. The Prime Minister has called the act disgraceful. Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White is outside the Ministry of Defence for us with the latest.
Palestine Action say the reason they breached security at Brize Norton and damaged the aircraft is because they claim those aircraft were being used in support of the Israeli military, something officials here at the MOD have said is absolute nonsense. Now, these engines are going to have to be stripped and cleaned out. It's likely to be a costly exercise, and there's also a review of how security was breached in such a way that these activists were able to get airside and cause such damage in the first place.
And the Princess of Wales has praised the life-changing work of the UK's children's hospices, calling them a lifeline for families facing the unimaginable. Catherine's message was shared just days after she pulled out of Royal Ascot as she continues to balance her return to public life following cancer treatment. Catherine, who's royal patron of 2 hospices, said no parent expects to hear their child has a life-shortening condition, but that hospice care means they don't face the future alone. Her words, of course, come ahead of the end of Children's Hospice Week this weekend. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at the top of the hour, and Martin will be straight back after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there, and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge, and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places. And it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night, despite the clear skies. Temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report. Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A77 faces restrictions at Ballantrae due to roadworks. Motorists are advised to anticipate longer journey times. The A55 westbound faces challenges from Llandudno Junction to Conwy Morfa as the tunnel remains closed with a contraflow. In Warwickshire, a collision on the M40 northbound between junction 11 and 12 has closed 2 lanes, causing delays. And on the trains, both cross-country and East Midlands railway services face disruptions, affecting routes between Nottingham and Derby, as well as Loughborough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 5 on this Friday afternoon. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves if you live in London or the South East, because your council tax bills are set to rocket in parts of the country like that to fund northern cities under the Labour Party's new plans. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, will set out plans for a so-called progressive redistribution of local authority funding designed to ensure that more Whitehall money goes to areas with the highest needs. Now, while she says the plans are aimed at fairness, council leaders in southern areas are warning the changes could be divisive and, let's face it, costly. Let's now speak with the business and the finance broadcaster, Michael Wilson. Michael, welcome to the show. We all care about fairness. We all care about good public services. But we have the Barnett formula, which takes money from Westminster and gives it to Wales, to Scotland and Northern Ireland. Is this more of the same? Is it taking from the so-called rich and giving to the poor? Is that the right thing to do? Or actually, is it fleecing Southerners?
I think it's very reassuring to know that those in the Westminster bubble agree that there is life north of whatever border they decide to put on it in the north of England. How clever of them to actually do that. Yes, the facts are that the South East and London contribute the most in income tax to the budget. Yes, you can argue what you like about the Barnett formula that gives money directly from our taxes to Scotland to allow Scotland to exist. But deep right down in this press release is this terrible word, accountability. Now, who is going to make sure that the services offered by the councils that are given more money actually fill the potholes in your road? That's what you really want to know about. The local problems. Please do get in touch with your local MPs and say, how are you actually going to solve locally what's wrong with what we're going through? Nobody cares about the international situation, the national situation. Yes, of course, the South has funded the North, and so it will continue to do so. Now, whether that's a good idea or not depends on whether that money that goes to the North is well spent. I see no mention of that whatsoever in these proposals at all, Martin.
And as you raise a great point there, because let's look at how councils in places like Birmingham, in places like Nottingham, my home city, spend money terribly. In fact, a lot of them have gone bankrupt. So the notion that we should shovel endless money not into potholes but maybe financial black holes is a quandary in itself. But again, didn't the Labour Party promise no more taxation on working people? Well, except if you live in London or the South East. Council tax is a tax on working people.
They did promise that, and I would ask you, what is a working person? Is that somebody who's inherited their wealth, or is it somebody who actually works for somebody? I suspect the latter. I don't think there is any mention in this about that, how that money might be spent. I find it quite extraordinary that local councils go bankrupt. For heaven's sake, if you had accountability, if you had skin in the game, if you had any kind of invested interest in what was going on, your council would not go bankrupt. But they do. I have no idea how they manage to do that, given that they have a free supply of public money within which to achieve whatever they promised to do. How does that happen? What I suspect happens is the people working for councils are not that skilled enough. They don't understand about business. They don't understand about operating contracts. And they don't understand either how to award contracts so that they actually get something out of those contracts that are actually beneficial for them and their ratepayers too. And remember, Martin, as I'm sure you're not quite as old as me, but you'll remember council tax, you'll remember rateable value, you'll remember the thing that brought Thatcher down in the end, which was her sort of postcode tax. None of this has actually worked. How on earth would spending more money to bankrupting councils actually help them? I suspect not a great deal.
Yeah, we had the spare room tax, didn't we? The bedroom tax. Jeremy Corbyn wanted a garden tax, the poll tax. Tax. This is just another working version of that. And it's not only working people, of course, pensioners living in the South East and London are expected to shovel money into Angela Rayner's purse. What could possibly go wrong giving that money to town halls across the country?
What could possibly go wrong is what's happened in the past, which is that the councils do not understand how to spend the money. And my overriding question about this is, get your local councillors and bring them down to your street and say, oi, what about this? How do we actually solve this? My bins, my potholes, whatever it may be, the local issues, how do local councils actually solve that? That's what you need to do. However, it has to be said that the South is richer than the North in terms of income tax paid in. If I were in the North, I'd be saying, I want some accountability. And I also want, I want to use those funds responsibly, but I also want to broadcast how we've actually used those funds as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's the reckoning that should be coming, perhaps. You know, the Department of Government Efficiencies, Doge, across all councils. Let's see where the Wonga is going. We have to leave it there. We're running out of time. Michael Wilson, a pleasure to have your company. Have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, and here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The hot air that we've got across the UK on Saturday extends into France and Spain, but the chance of thunderstorms in these areas as well. Also the chance of thundery showers through Greece, but the islands should escape with sunny spells, albeit with a keen breeze. Through Italy, we've got plenty of sunny skies, but the Alps will see some lively weather with showers and thunderstorms, and those showers also affecting parts of Spain. But Portugal seeing largely sunny skies and plenty of sunshine through the outlook period.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's completely unacceptable to have a biological man in a female-only changing room. And from my personal point of view, I was abused as a child, and having a man in our changing room is a particular trigger for me. And the Trust just did nothing about it, so we had to take things further.
So you complained to the Trust about this. You and your colleagues got together, and they just ignored you. They didn't really care about it.
Not they didn't care at all. We wrote a letter of concern. 26 of us signed it, and the response was that we needed to be re-educated. We needed to broaden our mindset, and they backed this trans person 150%.
So, Karen, this person who identifies as Rose, on one occasion they were staring at you or your colleagues' breasts in this changing room and asking, are you getting changed yet? Another of your colleagues had a panic attack. I don't think it was you. Is that accurate?
That was me.
And what do you make of people who call you a TERF or a bigot for complaining about this kind of thing? Because that's what they say.
They do, yes, but there's been loads of positivity out there for us. There's loads of positive comments, and I'm not a bigot. I'm not a TERF. I'm just fighting for what's right. I want to feel safe when I get changed.
Yeah.
There's like what's happened to me could have happened to other people, and I want to be a voice for them to stand up and come forward and say this is not acceptable.
Karen, you're a brave lady, you and your colleagues, and I'm glad, actually, it was Wes Streeting who intervened in the end, one of the more competent Labour ministers, who told Darlington Hospital, sort this out, you know, pull your finger out, don't be so ridiculous, and he got involved and he sorted it out for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back, 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, various council by-elections have taken place this week, including in Eastfield in North Yorkshire, where Reform UK candidate Tom Seston swept to victory with a whopping 62.7% of the vote share, which I believe is the biggest ever Reform landslide, gaining from an independent councillor. But how on earth did they get such a large share of the vote? Well, let's ask the man himself now. I'm joined by the victorious Tom Seston. Tom, welcome to the show. It's an impressive vote tally, 62.7%. Well done. How did you achieve it? It's a Labour area. I understand you more or less swept them into Scarborough Bay.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I ran this election on a positive campaign. I talked about local issues. I talked about housing. I talked about some of the slightly failed regeneration schemes that we've had around here. And I got out and I spoke to as many people as I could. Separately, Labour Party, who thought they would slide back into this seat, ran a very negative campaign. They didn't really have a lot to say. And their candidate was allegedly quite combative on the doorstep to people. It didn't do themselves any favours. And of course, nationally, they're not doing themselves any favours at all.
And Tom, I understand recently on 2nd of May, the Scarborough Council, 11 of 15 seats went to Reform. Clearly something's happening in Scarborough. We were speaking earlier, and a big issue you were talking about was about housing, local housing for local people, because, of course, Scarborough, like Blackpool, like lots of seaside towns, has become a dumping ground for social problems from towns, asylum seekers, people with drug problems, people from prison, and that is causing huge discontent amongst the local community.
Yeah, so Scarborough has lots of these very old grand Victorian townhouses, which in the 60s and 70s were converted into B&Bs or small hotels. And then when the domestic tourism market died off, they've become HMOs or very low-end flats. These have been bought up by companies who are farming themselves out to the Home Office, to the probation service. We're also getting lots of people from other areas of North Yorkshire being housed here, which is it's quite hard on local people who you know, perhaps have need social housing and have sort of the need a break. There's a few stories I could tell you, but probably haven't got time.
Yeah, I think what's happening around seaside towns across the entire United Kingdom, Tom, is that they are becoming dumping grounds for social problems, and the local people have just had enough. They want to be listened to. They want to be housed. They want to be taken care of and treated with equity.
Yeah, I mean, it's the term "left behind" does get used a lot. Now, Eastfield, for those who don't know, is a council housing estate just outside of Scarborough. We are officially a town, but people still view it as a council housing estate. The town centre, if you like, is a shopping precinct, and this is the prime example of why we're left behind. On the shopping precinct, there's two massive brick planters, which should be full of flowers and should be full of, flowers and bushes, and it should look nice. Instead, the council, someone somewhere in the council has just gone, stuff it. And they've abandoned them and just left them to rot. They're overgrown with nettles and weeds. There's a big chunk of bricks missing out the side of one of them.
Tom, you're exactly right.
Get that in Richmond, yeah.
Tom, we've got to leave it there, run out of time, but you're right. These small things really matter. Thank you for joining me on the show. It's a pleasure to have your company, Tom Seston there, Scarborough. Plenty more to come, including should Palestine Action be classified as a terrorist group? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. First, here's your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there, and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge, and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places, and it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night, despite the clear skies. Temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Currently, the A77 is restricted in both directions at Ballantrae due to essential roadworks, urging motorists to proceed cautiously and expect extended travel times. A collision on the M1 southbound between junction 26 and 25 near Nottingham has led to lane closures, causing delays of around 30 minutes. On the M40 northbound between junction 11 and 12 in Warwickshire, an incident involving multiple cars has closed 2 out of 3 lanes, with wait times expected to last up to 1 hour. And on the trains, both cross-country routes and East Midlands Railway are facing major disruptions, particularly between Nottingham and Derby. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
£54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Tudor, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
History is made as MPs vote to pass the assisted dying bill that will allow terminally ill adults with 6 months or less to live to get medical assistance to end their own lives. And throughout the show, we'll get reaction to this huge moment in Britain's history. And also coming up on today's show.
Palestine Action now needs to become, right now, a prescribed organisation.
Farage, the leader of Reform UK, is calling for protesters from Palestine Action who broke into RAF Brize Norton and damaged jets overnight to be classified as terrorists. Is it time to clamp down on these renter thugs and jail all protesters who break into military compounds? And Angela Rayner is planning a so-called bloodbath council tax raid on London and the South East. She says to help fund deprived areas in the north. Now, the Deputy PM claims that this is progressive. But with the top 10% of British earners already paying over 60% of all taxes, is this yet another socialist wealth tax? That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. History has been made as a law has been put into action that in 2029 or perhaps before, it will now be legal to end your life via euthanasia in the United Kingdom. What are your thoughts on that? Plus, is Nigel Farage right? Should Palestine Action be classified as a prescribed terrorist organisation? They broke into a classified RAF-based damaged RAF jets, and as it's been alerted to me, the Prime Minister's jet is in the background, used also by the royal family. This is a grotesque breach of British national security. I put it to you, if Just Stop Oil are put in nick for going on a motorway bridge on the M25, this lot, their feet shouldn't touch the floor. We should be rounding them up and slamming them up now for breaking into military compounds. That should be its own special crime. Let me know what you think on that story and anything else we're covering today by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom just after 5 o'clock. The top story tonight. History made. That is how campaigners have reacted as MPs narrowly backed a landmark-assisted dying law for England and Wales. The bill allowing terminally ill adults to end their lives with medical sign-off passed the Commons by just 23 votes.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
Well, cheers, tears and hugs filled Westminster as supporters called today a victory for compassion.
We won!
One MP has described the current law as forcing people to die in secret or die abroad. But critics warn it's a dangerous step, rushed through, they say, without proper safeguards and driven by emotion over evidence. The bill now heads to the House of Lords, with any change unlikely until before at least 2029. The UK is pulling staff from its embassy in Iran as a precaution amid fears the Israel-Iran conflict could escalate even further. It follows fresh Iranian strikes on Israel this afternoon, while Israel confirmed it hit missile manufacturing sites in Tehran overnight. The UK, France and Germany are now meeting Iran's foreign minister in Geneva in an urgent bid to de-escalate. It comes, too, as Donald Trump is expected to decide within weeks whether the United States will take any direct military action. Back here at home, a major security review is underway after pro-Palestinian activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint over 2 military planes. Footage shows them riding electric scooters inside the base and targeting an aircraft's engine. The Prime Minister has called the act disgraceful. Well, our Home Security Editor Mark White is outside the Ministry of Defence for us with the very latest.
Palestine actions say the reason they breached security at Brize Norton and damaged the aircraft is because they claim those aircraft were being used in support of the Israeli military, something officials here at the MOD have said is absolute nonsense. Now, these engines are going to have to be stripped and cleaned out. It's likely to be a costly exercise, and there's also a review of how security was breached in such a way that these activists were able to get airside and cause such damage in the first place.
Let's take you live now to scenes in Sicily, where the super yacht that killed British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and 6 others has just been raised from the seabed. The Bayesian sank during a storm last August, shortly after Lynch was cleared of fraud charges in the United States. That yacht is now being hauled ashore for forensic investigation, with hopes it could reveal why the vessel went down. Though the £20 million salvage effort has been plagued by delays and, sadly, the death of one of the recovery divers. Italian prosecutors have now launched a manslaughter probe with 3 crew members under investigation. And from Italy to Russia, where Vladimir Putin has claimed the whole of Ukraine is ours and suggested Russian troops could soon take the city of Sumy. Well, as you can see there, he is live speaking at a forum in St. Petersburg, saying Russians and Ukrainians are one people. He justified the invasion of Ukraine by saying Russia is carving out a buffer zone for its own security. Kyiv, though, has dismissed the claims, calling Moscow's actions illegal and rejecting any shared national identity. Well, that summit comes as Britain and its allies are vowing to crack down on Russia's shadow fleet in the Baltic and North Seas, with leaders saying they're tightening the net, promising stronger united efforts to expose and block covert Russian shipping. Princess of Wales has praised the life-changing work of the UK's children's hospices, calling them a lifeline for families facing the unimaginable. Catherine's message was shared just days after she pulled out of the Royal Ascot as she continues to balance her return to public life following cancer treatment. Catherine, who's royal patron of 2 hospices, said no parent expects to hear their child has a life-shortening condition, but that hospices care means they don't face the future alone. Her words come ahead of the end of Children's Hospice Week this weekend. And just before I go, let's take a look at these remarkable pictures coming to us out of Hawaii, where jets of lava more than 1,000 feet high have erupted from the Kilauea volcano in one of its most explosive episodes so far this year. The eruption began late last night and intensified through the morning hours, with fountains lighting up the sky and triggering increased seismic activity. You can see there that volcanic plume rising into the air, carrying glass-like shards and ash that could potentially spread downwind into the island. Lava remains contained, though, in the summit crater for now, but experts warn the potential hazards could increase. It is Kilauea's 26th lava episode since just December, making it one of the world's most active volcanoes. Fantastic pictures there. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And on this historic day in British Parliament, we begin with the huge news that MPs have voted to approve the assisted dying bill. And that means now that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could now seek medical assistance to end their lives under law. Let's remind ourselves now of the historic moment this took place in Parliament a short while ago.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, and look!
Well, the mood in Parliament was sombre. This was the moment that campaigners outside of Parliament celebrated that result.
We won!
Yeah, so we can now speak with Fleur Meston, who campaigned against assisted dying. Fleur, welcome to the show. Did it strike you as, I don't know, somewhat macabre there that people were cheering this law through as if it was a football goal?
Yeah, I think just a few yards away there were disabled people who were crying because they are scared, rightly so. They're vulnerable. You know, as a lot of MPs said in the debate, disabled people are often treated as second-class citizens in our society. And now we've just legislated for a law which puts them at risk. On my walk around Westminster, just to clear my head after the vote, I saw a lot of Dignity in Dying campaigners out drinking to death, which is, yeah, a very strange thing to be doing.
It's hugely divided the nation. Parliamentarians voted narrowly to put it through, only by a margin of 23. Significant reduction on the previous situation. Tom Tugendhat, Conservative, said MPs voted on assisted killing. James cleverly pointed out the NHS simply can't afford it. It's a blank cheque. An unlikely political ally, Diane Abbott, said that no doubt people will die unnecessarily under the assisted dying bill. Fleur Meston, are you concerned that this bill, if it comes into law by 2029, could become even more progressive, could become a slippery slope, as we've seen happen in places like Canada?
So I'm actually feeling pretty confident that, you know, as we've seen over time, support has massively dropped. There was a majority of 55 at second reading, and it's slipped to just 23 votes, as well as a lot of professional bodies and royal colleges saying they may be neutral on the principle of assisted suicide, but that this bill is bad. So having that support chip away at every stage, even down to last night, one more MP came out publicly against it. I think that with the time that it will be allowed in the Lords, it can absolutely be defeated there. However, if the bill, as it stands, went through now, yes, there is be a huge chance of slippery slope. There's not one country that has managed to do this safely without people falling through the net. People point to Australia, but there's been at least one case there where someone took their partner's lethal drugs, but they've only had it for a few years, so there is absolutely time for things to go wrong there. And I don't really understand why the majority of MPs think that we will be the ones that can get it right. We are the chosen ones, and why we can't learn from the situations abroad and make the right decisions.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on today's show. And that is Fleur Meston, who campaigned against assisted dying. Well, I'm also joined in the studio by Mark Francois MP, who's joined us hot-footed from Parliament. Before we get on to the pro-Palestine story, I wonder if I can get your take on the historic vote that's just taken place. It's been quite a week, would you not say, for voting for death. We had the abortion bill earlier this week. We've had assisted dying going through today. Can I get your thoughts on today's historic vote?
Well, you're right. It's been an extremely busy week in the House of Commons. But there's something that should have happened today that didn't happen. And because of what happened to Brize Norton, which I think we're going to come on to in a moment, the government should have come to the House and made a statement about the Brize Norton incident. They could have done that at the end of the day, whilst all of the stuff on the bill was done. They could have delayed the adjournment debate. I know I had the adjournment debate about Labour trying to cover my constituency in concrete. I would gladly have waited an hour to allow the Defence Secretary to come to Parliament and explain what happened. the government didn't do that, so there absolutely must be a statement by the Defence Secretary on Monday in the Commons about how 2 people were able to get in to what's supposed to be a highly secure RAF airbase and get right up to very, very important strategic aircraft.
I mean, let's just make sure people are fully aware what this story is.
Yes.
It is that elsewhere today, early this morning, pro-Palestine protesters broke into RAF Brize Norton in Oxfordshire, damaging 2 military aircraft there, as Mr Francois said. Now, the group known as Palestine Action justified their actions by saying Britain continues to send military cargo and flies spy planes over Gaza. Now, the incident is now being investigated by officers from counter-terrorism policing South East. And, of course, Shadow Defence Minister Mark Francois, it asks a huge amount of questions. The first one, let's start at the very beginning. How on earth can a compound so strategically important, and it's meant to be impervious to infiltration from anybody who wishes harm, be so easy to breach into? They waltzed in on electric scooters, for God's sake.
Well, that's sort of adding insult to injury, isn't it? But look, I've got here the Strategic Defence Review, you know, the government's big policy document, and it says, I quote, page 114, particular attention should be given to contingency planning for RAF Brize Norton, the main hub in the UK for much of what the RAF delivers globally. So all of our key transport aircraft, refuelers, they're all at Brize in Oxfordshire. Someone once described it as the RAF's equivalent of Heathrow. Right? So it's a big site, but nonetheless, it should be properly defended. Now, what sometimes happens in these circumstances is it takes a while to get to the bottom of it. I still think the Defence Secretary should have told Parliament today what we do know, but certainly once they've had the weekend to go into this, there'd be no excuse whatsoever for the Defence Secretary not to explain. Now, John Healey has rightfully, because of this incident, announced a review of security at all military installations in the UK and presumably abroad as well. Correct thing to do, but then he's got to come to Parliament on Monday so MPs can ask him questions about it. We're there to ask questions.
Let's be absolutely blunt about this. If 2 clowns on e-scooters from Palestine Action can waltz into Brize Norton and just throw... Mercifully, they threw paint. They could have thrown anything. What does that say to jihadists, to actual terrorists? This is an utter farce.
Well, look, after the tragedy of Air India 787, you know, the Dreamliner, for anyone to muck about or interfere in any way, even for a publicity stunt, you know, with the engines of a large aircraft. And by the way, those Voyager aircraft are either used to transport troops or their families or as air-to-air refuelling. They can do a bit of both. So these are vital aircraft. After the Air India crash, to do this is sick. But you're quite right, Martin. What if they were carrying bombs and not paint? Then what? What could the loss of life have been, particularly if one of those aircraft was a refueler and it was full?
Well, Mark Francois, let's get some pictures on the screen now, because I think most of the broadcasters missed this, but I've picked this up. There's an aircraft in the background here. It's the RAF Voyager Vespina. Now, that was in the background. You can see it quite clear. This is in the protesters' own footage. Yeah. That aircraft is used to transport the royal family. That aircraft is used to transport the Prime Minister. That aircraft is used to transport government ministers going abroad about their business. Mark Francois, this gets worse by the minute. Now, this could have been a jet that the royal family could have travelled on. They could have placed a device on that. It gets worse and worse the longer you look at it.
Well, the simple way to think of that aircraft is it's the sort of British equivalent of Air Force One. Right? The royal family use it, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet use it.
But these bozos just walked up to it.
Well, no, they cycle up to it on electronic cycles or scooters, by the look of it. So, you know, this shouldn't happen, right? So the Defence Secretary has ordered an urgent review. OK, let's see what that finds. This shouldn't have happened. We've now got to make sure it never, ever happens again.
All right, I'll tell you this. So Just Stop Oil got banged up for climbing up a motorway gantry on the M25. What should happen to this lot?
Well, have they been arrested?
Well, I don't think they've been caught.
Well, you know, right, well, in that case, you say what should happen. Well, the first thing is someone should catch them.
And then what?
And then we should, you know, we should exercise the full force of the law.
But what should that be? I mean, does it fall within treason? It can't be mere trespass.
No,
it has to be a special dispensation to protect a place like this.
There are laws that protect sensitive military sites, including air bases. So that you've got all the legislation you need in order to deal with it. The problem is you didn't have the security to stop it. I mean, you could say this is a wake-up call in terms of our defence. The whole tenor of this white paper is that we should be more prepared for potential war in order, hopefully, to deter it from happening. Vladimir Putin, if he's seen that at Brize Norton, is not going to be frightened. Quite the opposite.
Well, actually, I think he'd be laughing. How on earth can we send out a message on the one hand that we're on a war footing, we're going to stand against tyrants, and then a couple of clowns on e-scooters waltz up towards jets?
Well, if you remember, during the Afghanistan war, there was an occasion when the Taliban broke in to Bastion, where there were aircraft based there. They did it in the middle of the night. I mean, this was an armed military attack. And the RAF Regiment, 51 Squadron, who were trained to deal with exactly that, did what it said on the tin. They crashed out of their barracks and they dealt with the incursion within hours. So in a wartime context, the RAF Regiment did a brilliant job of recovering the situation in RAF Bastion. This is the total opposite of that.
So Nigel Farage thinks Palestine Action should be prescribed as a terrorist group. What say you?
Well, we need to find out exactly what lay behind this. Was it a stunt? Was it something of more serious intent? The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps should have been prescribed long ago. Yep. We, as a government, should have done it. We didn't. We are now calling on the Labour Party to do it. They should have done it, particularly given the events of the last few weeks. They haven't. And remember, Iran funded Hezbollah, funded Hamas, funded the Houthis who fired rockets at British shipping in the Red Sea. And, oh, by the way, have given ballistic missiles to the Russians to fire at Ukraine. So, for a start, whatever we do with Palestine Action, we should prescribe the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
And perhaps if you treat pro-Palestine protesters with kid gloves for so long, this is what happens. Mark Francois, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Always a pleasure to have your company. Shadow Defence Minister Mark Francois, MP. Now, coming up next, Angela Rayner is planning a so-called bloodbath council tax raid on Londoners and those in the South East to help fund deprived areas in the North. But is it right for the South to pay for the North like this? That's with me, Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Welcome back. It's 5:25 on this beautiful Friday afternoon. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves for more pain because council tax bills are set to rise in parts of southern England and in London to fund northern cities under the Labour Party's new tax plans. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, will set out plans for a so-called progressive redistribution of local authority funding designed to ensure that more Whitehall money goes to areas with the highest needs. Now, while she says that the plans are aimed at fairness, council leaders in southern areas are warning the changes could be divisive and, let's face it, blooming costly. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by the head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, that's called Elliot Keck. Welcome to the show, always a pleasure. Here we go again. See, I thought that the wealthiest people already paid the most tax. The top 10% of taxpayers already pay 60% of tax. Most of them tend to live in London and the South East, and they're once again getting raided.
Yeah, there's a bit of a whiff of class war about this, I have to say, Martin. You know, the way that the central government organises grants to local authorities already takes into account the fact that places in the south have higher property values, therefore they're able to raise more council tax, takes into account the fact that the places in the south have more businesses, so they get more business rates, so that's redistributed. So this is all already being done, right? It's not like, you know, places in the south are able to keep all of their income, and this is already being done to quite a large extent. What the government is now saying is we're going to double down on this. We're going to increase this even further. The wealthy, which, as you say, already pay a vast amount of tax, you're going to have to keep on paying even more to subsidise poorer places in the north. And some of that is acceptable, but to the extent that they're going, I think they're going well beyond it, and it's just socialism, pure and simple.
Angela Rayner would point out, perhaps with some, fairness, that council tax for a 3-bedroom semi-detached in Hartlepool is more than an £80 million mansion in Westminster. But that misses the basic point. There are many more houses in dense areas. So the council tax rake is much higher. It's higher in these smaller towns because there are fewer properties and they still need their bins emptied. So it's simplistic. But is there any merit to this idea at all, or is it just another socialist tax grab?
Again, listen, there is some merit in redistributing some wealth and some income around the country. That's absolutely fine. But that is already being done. You know, that's the point we need to make here. This is already being done en masse to quite a significant extent. Why are you doubling down on this when you say that you want to achieve growth and you want to, keep the wealthy from moving abroad? And that's why I have to say it does look like socialism, plain and simple. There are parts of the south, let's be honest, that are actually quite poor. the place where a council tax is the highest proportion of the local salary is actually in the south. It's in West Devon, a couple of places in West Devon where it's particularly bad. So, you know, it's this sort of division between north and south I always find a bit simplistic, very, very simplistic. There's also some very wealthy places in the north. But listen, ultimately, this is just going to further punish the wealthy, successful, prosperous places in the south, and that's not going to be good for anybody.
I thought we were promised no more taxes on the working man and woman. This is a tax on the working man and woman. It's also a tax on the retired. Pensioners would also be chipping into Angela's pot.
Oh, yeah, but not students, Martin. And the thing is what we'll end up seeing is we'll see big tax rises in the south. Do you think they're going to be cutting council tax in Hartlepool? Do you think they're going to be cutting council tax in Burnley? Do you think any of these places that we're talking about as, oh, look how high the council tax is relative to some places down south, they're not going to get council tax cuts. They never get council tax cuts. It's the same thing every single year. So, again, this is the same socialist playbook. Rather than trying to make everybody a bit better off, let's make the best off worse off and hope that everybody sort of feels a bit happier because we're more equal. It's tried and tested method and it always fails.
And what could possibly go wrong with shoveling loads more money into local authorities, a lot of which are bankrupt? I mean, is there not a greater conversation to have, Elliot Cake, about efficiency? You know, the Reform Party looking at their Doge units. How is the money spent? Are you spending it in the right areas? Are you efficient? Can we trust you? Rather than saying, yeah, no problem, lads, here's a load more dosh, spend it how you will.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And listen, you know, something that actually the Cameron government did to some extent, which was they pegged a load of the money they were given as the condition for it was you don't increase council tax. So if Angela Rayner was saying we're going to give some of these councils, somewhere like Hartlepool with very high levels of council tax, a load of extra money, but the condition is you have to cut council tax. There's something interesting to be spoken about there. That's not going to happen. Hartlepool will end up increasing council tax, probably by the maximum amount. Everyone will get poorer.
There you go. Well said, Elliot Cake. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you for popping in to see us in the studio in Westminster on a Friday afternoon. Of course, the head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Thank you. Now, there's more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and I'll be speaking to a farmer who's been called the Farminator because he's rounded up more than 5,000 illegal immigrants on his land over the past decade. And he says that Keir Starmer treats them like royalty. Trust me, you would not want to mess with the Farminator. He's coming next. But before that, if you're travelling home from work or from school, first of all, stay safe. And then here is your traffic and your travel update. And please stick with us. The Farminator is next.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Motorists face delays on the A77 at Ballantrae due to essential roadworks, restricting both directions. Expect longer journey times. On the M6 southbound between junctions 36 and 34 in Lancashire, congestion is causing 50-minute delays. On the M1 near Nottingham, a collision southbound between junction 26 and 25 has led to one lane closure, causing a 15-minute delay today. The M40 northbound between junctions 11 and 12 in Warwickshire is facing significant delays of 1 hour due to a multi-vehicle accident with 2 lanes closed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Have a safe trip home, and now it's time for your headlines, and here is Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you, just after 5:30. History made today. That is how campaigners have reacted as MPs narrowly backed a landmark assisted dying law for England and Wales. The bill allowing terminally ill adults to end their lives with medical sign-off passed in the Commons by just 23 votes.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
Terminally ill Dame Esther Ranson has thanked MPs for helping to protect people from what she called a bad death. And cheers, tears and hugs filled Westminster as supporters called it a victory.
We won!
One MP described the current law as forcing people to die in secret. But critics are warning the new law is a dangerous step, rushed through, they say, without proper safeguards and driven by emotion over evidence. The bill now heads to the House of Lords, with any change unlikely before 2029. UK staff have been pulled out of Iran as the security situation in the region is worsening. The British Embassy is now operating remotely, with the government calling it a precautionary measure. It follows Israeli strikes on Iranian military sites and Iran's missile retaliation last week. Foreign Secretary David Lammy is in Geneva today, urging diplomacy in high-stakes nuclear talks. The latest on the situation at Brize Norton. We now know that counter-terrorism police are leading an investigation after activists broke into the RAF base overnight. Footage showed them riding electric scooters inside the base and spraying red paint on 2 military aircraft. The Prime Minister has called the act disgraceful. Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White has been outside the Ministry of Defence for us today.
Well, Palestine Action say the reason they breached security at Brize Norton and damaged the aircraft is because they claim those aircraft were being used in support of the Israeli military, something officials here at the MOD have said is absolute nonsense. Now, these engines are going to have to be stripped and cleaned out. It's likely to be a costly exercise, and there's also a review of how security was breached in such a way that these activists were able to get airside and cause such damage in the first place.
And a UK heatwave is peaking Saturday, set to hit 34 degrees in London and already passing the heatwave threshold in the city. An amber heat health alert, though, remains in force across England, warning of pressure on hospitals and rising health risks. There's also a yellow storm warning in place from 3 p.m. tomorrow, covering parts of the Midlands, Wales and northern England. Forecasters are warning of flash floods, hail and even lightning as heat triggers humidity and intense thunderstorms. Fire crews have already battled over 500 wildfires so far this year, up more than 700% on last year. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay safe and stay cool in that heat. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there, and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge, and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places. And it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night. Despite the clear skies, temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:38 with me, Martin Daubney, on this glorious Friday afternoon here on GB News. Now, we're counting down to your best summer so far. £54,321. That's right, 54321 in tax-free cash. And that's all to be won. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away on our Great British Giveaway. And it could all be yours. And here's all the details.
The Great British Giveaway is now even greater, with your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally tax-free £54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Imagine what you could do with that. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Let's continue with that. Historic news today that MPs have voted to approve the assisted dying bill, meaning that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to help end their lives. Let's remind ourselves of this moment in Parliament earlier this afternoon.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. And look!
Well, the mood afterwards in Parliament was sombre. Outside on the streets outside of Parliament, campaigners celebrated the result.
We won!
Some might say it's a strange thing to be happy about, but I'm joined now in the studio by the CEO of Care Not Killing, Gordon MacDonald. Gordon, welcome to the show. I'm assuming Care Not Killing, you're all about trying to give better end-of-life care, not accelerating the end-of-life moment. What are your thoughts on what must be a dark day for you?
Well, it's certainly a very sad day that Parliament voted the way they did, but the majority was cut in half, more than in half, and I think that shows that the more people think about this issue, the less likely they are to support it, and they change their minds. And we know that's the case with the public as well, because we did a poll which we published last week, and only 13% of people actually support this when they consider the arguments against. So it is a minority that are really supportive of this, and most people, as I say, might be sympathetic in principle. They don't want to see people suffering, but actually when they think about the implications for those who are vulnerable, the disabled, the elderly, they then change their mind.
Gordon, this may not become law until 2029 before it's fully implemented. We may have a general election before that. Do you live in hope? Is there a possibility that this could be reprieved by a future government? If there are a change of government and a change of mindset, might this never come to be law?
Well, I think it's certainly possible for a number of reasons. One is it's very difficult to implement in a safe way, and I think we saw that with all the amendments that essentially the government got Kim Leadbeater to propose. But also, as you say, there will be a general election. And, you know, the way politics is at the moment, anything could happen at that general election. And, you know, we will certainly be encouraging people when it comes to the next general election to think about how they vote and who they should vote for on the basis of what happened today.
Putting that to one side, there have been reservations from people like yourself about how this may be implemented. It could become more liberal. We've seen, for example, in countries such as Canada, starting off at a similar position to Britain today, but we've heard of military veterans with PTSD being included suddenly, people with anorexia, people who just decided they no longer wanted to live. Are you concerned that that could happen in Britain, or do you think that the checks and balances are robust and in place to prevent that from happening?
Well, the checks are very thin, actually, on the ground. I mean, it is a tick box exercise by 2 doctors. And yes, there's this panel, but the panel comes at the very end of the process. And there aren't enough psychiatrists and there aren't enough social workers in any case to do that level of scrutiny. So I think that there is a real danger that we will go down the same road as Canada. It will take a few years, as happened in Canada. But the thing about Canada is it happened very quickly. It was 5 or 6 years later. It's not like Oregon. It's not like the Netherlands, where it happened over 20 years, the liberalisation, the expansion of the law. It is happened very rapidly in Canada, and it's already beginning to happen in Australia. So we will see that here too, I think.
James cleverly earlier on said that the NHS is not ready for this bill. It could be a blank cheque they would have to sign about the number of procedures. What about if we flip that around? End-of-life care is expensive. It's the most expensive type of healthcare. Some people suggested this could even be a cost-saving exercise to get people at the most expensive part of their health journey, if you like, to be killed off early. That seems grotesque. There's nothing in that, is there?
Well, I think it's a driver which will be behind the scenes. You've got to remember 1/4 of hospital admissions in this country are people in the last 12 months of life. So there is a huge potential saving for the Treasury here. And, you know, I think it's very difficult to believe that the government haven't actually thought about that. Certainly the impact assessment that was published did actually put, highlight the savings that would come from it. But they're only the healthcare savings, there are also pension savings and other savings as well. So you can see how it could be very attractive if people are, just looking at it as a bottom line issue. And clearly that's completely distasteful. But that is the worry, isn't it? That's what might become the norm.
It's almost too ghoulish to comprehend the state-sponsored culling of the elderly. What a thought. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. That's the CEO of Care Not Killing, Gordon MacDonald. Thank you very much. Thanks. Now, on a completely separate tone, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The hot air that we've got across the UK on Saturday extends into France and Spain, but the chance of thunderstorms in these areas as well. Also the chance of thundery showers through Greece, but the islands should escape with sunny spells, albeit with a keen breeze. Through Italy, we've got plenty of sunny skies, but the Alps will see some lively weather with showers and thunderstorms, and those showers also affecting parts of Spain. But Portugal seeing largely sunny skies and plenty of sunshine through the outlook period.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
King Charles is stepping back from one of the most traditional royal duties. That's riding on horseback for the Trooping of the Colour, which is coming up, I think, in a week's time, isn't it? At 76 and undergoing cancer treatment, he'll now take the salute from a carriage, just as Queen Elizabeth did in her later years. But as the King trades saddle for state coach, it raises a bigger question. Does the pomp and pageantry of royal events like Trooping the Colour still resonate with modern Britain? Or are we holding on to rituals that really reflect the country, and do we really care?
I think the spectacle is important because it's symbolic, OK, and people really respond to that notion of heritage and grandeur. But I think it's about more than that. It's about constitutional monarchy. There are 3 key points here. Constitutional monarchy produces higher standards of living than republics. It protects property rights and individual property because in the long term, it's not as vulnerable to ideology. And it holds a check on politicians as well. I'd much rather have King Charles than President Blair. And it's about continuity.
Legoland is just a short hop, skip and jump away from Windsor Castle. It gets many more visitors than any royal castle or other event. So we don't need the royals to have spectacle. We can have spectacle without it. And
Okay,
I think,
but you're not suggesting chopping their heads off, are you?
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. No, I'd be very kind and gentle. But the one point that was made was that the royals are part of British culture and tradition. But in fact, the royals are German descent, who were basically, by their own internal agreement, took over the British throne.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Come back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello, everyone. Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 10 to 6. Been waiting for this story all afternoon. You with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, a legendary Bedfordshire farmer dubbed as the Farminator, who says he's rounded up over 5,000 illegal immigrants on his land in the past decade. Now, Chris Gadsden claims up to 50 stowaways a week have been sneaking from lorries after a 125-mile trip from Dover. And now he's blasted at Sir Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of treating illegal immigrants like royalty, while locals are left to deal with the fallout. I'm delighted to say now I'm joined by the man they call the Farminator, Chris Gadsden. Chris, welcome to the show. I tell you what, mate, I wouldn't mess with you. 5,000 in 10 years. We could do with a bit of your spirit on the beaches in Dover.
Yes, you could, I should say, yeah.
So tell us, mate, about how you got started on this. I'm assuming the stowaways stopped near your land and they soon found their way onto your fields.
They did indeed. I mean, this goes back over a span of 30 years, to be honest, for 38 years, to be honest with you. We purchased the farm 38 years ago. Within 12 months of us living on the farm, the police come down and asked if they could do a survey. And I said, well, what's the survey for? They said checking on illegal immigrants coming off the lorries. So I said, yeah, no problem, carry on. They sat up, probably there for a few days. They didn't do too well on that because they was only coming in dribs and drabs in them days. It was probably just over 10 years ago that they started to really become a nuisance.
And you can see them, they're milling around in your fields and their encampments turning up in your fields. They became a real issue. And on to the broader point now, Chris. Obviously, we have a huge problem with the huge amounts coming down onto the coast there in Dover, in asylum seeker hotels across the country. Maybe we should get you down to Parliament, mate. Maybe we should get you having your say and giving the Prime Minister a few lessons on how to deal with this crisis.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah, I'd enjoy that, to be honest with you. Someone needs to tell him. The trouble is, when people don't have it on their own doorstep, they're not aware of really what the world is really going on and the aggravation it causes and the money it's costing all us normal working people.
And Chris, in a nutshell, if you were to talk to the Prime Minister, what would you say?
Get your act together.
I think that's a very, very polite way of putting it. Why don't we call it a day while we're quit while ahead? The Farminator. Chris Gadsden, thank you very, very much for joining us. I tell you what, I wouldn't mess with you, mate. You've got your shirt on there, but I've seen photographs of you with your shirt off. You're covered in tattoos. Not one to mess with. Let's get you on the beaches there in Dover. Now, thank you very much for joining me this week. It's my birthday this weekend. I turn 55. I'll see you on the other side. But first, it's Jubes & Co. But this time, it's with Miriam Kay. It's the magnificent Miriam is next. Miriam, what's on your menu?
Good evening, Martin. Well, yes, after that historic vote in Parliament on the terminally ill end-of-life adults bill, we're going to be asking what's next for assisted dying. Of course, supporters of the bill are celebrating, but we'll be asking, is it even going to get through the House of Lords? And looking at the Iran-Israel war, we're going to be asking, what does it mean for this country after those sabotage of those fighter jets last night? And of course, should we level up the north by asking the south to pay more council tax? That's all coming up after your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. It's increasingly hot out there and it's going to become even hotter in places during tomorrow. Some patchy cloud around, some isolated showers here and there, but otherwise for the vast majority we've got high pressure in charge and that's been directing the heat northwards during the day, so it's widespread heat rather than more localised to the south. Temperatures widely in the mid to high 20s, low 30s in places. And it's going to lead on to a very warm night. Always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm across northeast Scotland, northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night. Despite the clear skies, temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend.